Hello everyone, my name is Owen Rodabaugh. I'm the PS manager for Puppet Labs, so I see all of our PS's professional services. So I see all the questions and the work that we scope for our customers, either scoping it myself or approving it. We have a team of about 20 PSEs, and so I hear from them about what they're doing, what's going on. That said, I am not a practitioner, so if we get too detailed, I'm going to have to defer to someone else. But anyway, if you guys want to talk about services afterwards, let me know. I'm happy to chat. Probably intersperse some comments here about what our various customers are asking us to do and what problems we're facing out there. And with that, I'll move on to just a quick poll. Show of hands. How many are using Puppet today? Nice. So it looks like maybe half or so. Okay, so of the folks using Puppet, how many have been doing that for 6 months? And for just 6 months?
Keep your hands up.
Keep your hands up.
I only have a few.
Don only has a few, but...
Did you? Okay. You don't get to.
And the book is really only good for beginners, so just throw that out there. Don't worry, there's a book for the advanced people too. Okay, how many people have been using Puppet for between 6 months and a year?
6 months, 1 hour.
Nice game in the system. And how about for 2 years? Okay, we're starting to drop off. How about 3 years? So I see 3 people. It looks like 3 years. Of those that are 3 years or more, how many are doing it for more than 4? Oh wow. And is there anyone specifically who is doing writing any types and providers or doing any advanced Puppet features? All right, we ran out of those books. I'm sorry. Don't worry, you can look it up. It's the Types and Providers pamphlet by Ann Liu and Dan Bodie. It's great. Let's see, what other questions was I supposed to ask? How many of you are using Puppet 2x? Anybody? A few. We should talk after this. How about 3x? Okay, good. Good majority. Good. And anybody here using PE? Okay. All right. Good. I like that. I like having a salary. Okay. I think that's all my questions. So, I got a bunch of slides here, but basically we live in interesting times from a IT operations perspective. Things only get more complex these days, and this interesting times. It's the old Chinese curse, right? So there are more services, there are more servers. Everything is more critical. There's really no future in which IT becomes less than it is today. It's only going to get more complex from here. And thus the jobs of the practitioners, of the people in this room, is probably going to get harder too. So remember there used to be maintenance windows. Used to be you could have like a weekend to do stuff and deploy, and that's, I would say, kind of gone now. I mean, for some stuff you get that if it's only a business hours application, but there's a lot of stuff that has to run 24/7. So you've got to plan. When are you going to do a rolling update or do that sort of thing. I remember my last job, we would do an upgrade, and there'd be the 9 p.m. pizza call. Why isn't it working yet? There's just no time for that these days, at least from what I hear from my customers and what I see in the marketplace. So stuff is getting more complex with less tolerance for errors. So what I hear a lot from our customers these days is, I'd say the most common story is we're trying to build a self-service deployment portal for our developers to get boxes faster. Everyone wants more stuff and they want it faster. And if in-house IT can't do it, they'll just go to the cloud. In fact, we do this in PS. If we can't get internal resources, we go to Amazon to do our testing. Keep done. Okay. So it used to be 9 months is too long to get service provisioned. I've been at customers where we've talked to them, they said, well, it's 180 days, and then the devs come to us and say 180 business days to get a server. And that just won't work anymore. In fact, 3 months is too long. I talked to a lot of customers, and they're saying, it takes me 2 months to deploy my app, and I want to get that down to 2 weeks or less. And I assume, I'm sure everyone here is feeling that pressure in some way or another. The old practices that used to work, just throw more bodies at it, get one admin for every 25 servers, those don't work anymore. When you're adding, 1,000 servers a year, that's a lot of admins, that's a lot of overhead, it's a lot of cost. And so those old practices are going to have to change, have to go away. You can't just build a run book and hope that will tide you over for a while. Nowadays with AWS and the other clouds out there, GCE and all that, someone can go and launch 1,000 servers in less than an hour. Heck, some of the customers' internal virtual environments can do that in 20 minutes. And so the way things are going, it's not good enough to take 2 hours to spin up a server or a day to spin up a clustered stack. And the way workloads are shifting, especially on the consumer side. In order to compete, people are having to auto-scale, they're having to be much more elastic in what they're doing. And I guess all this, my point here is with all this, that stuff is getting harder. This stuff isn't easier. And on the development side, there's a lot of people switching. A lot of big companies I talk to these days, one of the first questions we ask them is, so what are you using for version control? And it's surprising, there's still a lot of, I hear CVS every now and then, and some SVN, and there's a lot of old practices out there, but there's a lot of mainstream companies that are still switching to that model, to being their development being more agile, more lean, and shipping code more often. And that, from an operations perspective, that's that much more work. There's some big movements in the IT space. We keep hearing about DevOps. We just released the DevOps report last week, I believe. And what we found is that when we correlated all the data from the 9,000-ish respondents, and then I think 1,000 people responded with what their public company's ticker was, and we found that high performance in IT correlated to high business performance. So this is going to continue to be a trend. Companies are realizing that it's not, IT is not just a cost center, but it needs to improve to make things better for the company as a whole. The cloud is a major IT movement. When you can spin up 1,000 servers on the cloud and your IT shop can't get them to you for 3 months, it's a tricky spot to be in. So there's no future in which there are fewer services, fewer servers, less complexity. Things are only going to get more difficult. Things are not going to get less critical. Your allowance for downtime is unlikely to increase, only decrease. And software as a service is setting the trend. People, businesses in general don't want to worry about the software, and in fact, development groups don't want to worry about having to understand the service. They just want to check in some code and see that it runs and move forward. So making stuff much more as just a service provided to a business. I talk to some of the huge companies that we work with, and it's very much the IT shop is really just a business providing services to the rest of the business, and with that comes pretty high expectations. Some places are looking at how can we outsource everything that's not critical, but as practitioners in any company, I don't know that any of us want to see that. So it's how can we kind of keep up with that trend and provide those same levels of service or better. And this allows the opportunity to invest in some unique tools to make that easier to do. The way things are right now, to do this complexity, if you can't hire more admins and you can't do all this manually, because you can't, no matter how many you have, you've got to find some other way to get around this. And then I'd say what we're seeing is that enterprise software pays the bills these days. There's a lot of stuff in the consumer space, but consumers are not big purchasers of specific software as much these days. And if they are, the payments are much smaller. It's just not a consumer buying cycle right now. So this is where Puppet Labs comes in. What we're working on is, I think it was about 6 months ago, Luke came to us, his company, and said, here's our new mission statement, or goal. The goal of Puppet Labs is to drive the cost of technological change to zero. I don't know that we'll ever get to zero, I seriously doubt it. But the idea is that if we can make it simpler for things to change, then that will make it simpler for all people using Puppet to make the changes they need to make in order for their business to succeed. And so, as it says here, our goal is to be the ones driving down the cost of technological change. So some history on Puppet. Luke Knies started Puppet 8.5 years ago, and it was originally, and still is, an open source project. It was just him for, I think, the first year or two. And then, he started small. I think 4 years ago, Puppet Labs truly came into existence with very first round of funding, and something like 10 or 20 people. Today we're 300. Last year when I started, we were 150. And Luke started it because he worked with the other tools in the space, with CF Engine, and there's a list of other open source tools at the time, and none of them did quite what he wanted. So he had this crazy idea that I'll just quit my job and write my own thing. And 8.5 years later, that's a bit of some bumps in the road, but still here. And I'd say it really has spurred a new generation of tools. There's Puppet out there, but there's a lot of other tools that are kind of built around the same concepts, with differences. But it really has changed the way the market for these types of tools exists. So Puppet is about data center and cloud automation. It's primarily for servers right now. Although we are starting to get into the network and storage device space. We've got some various work out there right now. I've got someone working on some modules for NetApp. At Cisco Live, we presented some stuff for the new Cisco switches, where they can run a Puppet agent in a container within the switch to interact with the Cisco APIs. And Puppet can work on workstations and laptops, and there are some companies out there that do that. Probably not the place where we're necessarily looking to be. We're much more looking to be in the data center and cloud automation space right now. It seems like that's where the need for agility is greatest, and where we think the best fit for what Puppet can do is. So many of you know about Puppet, but for those of you that don't, here's a snippet of code to just kind of show the idea is that Puppet's very easy to get started. So what this is showing is a standard Puppet manifest, or in this case class. So package file service is a very common pattern. So it's saying, make sure that OpenSSH is installed on the server, that it's present. Then drop this SSHD config file onto the server, source it from the Puppet master. So essentially you can take this manifest, apply it to your server, apply it to all your servers even, and ensure that all your SSH keys are the same across all your servers. And you show this to your auditors and say, look, this is what we're doing across everything. All the keys are there. And when a new guy starts or somebody quits, you can just update this file on the Puppet server, and within 30 minutes it should be checked in across your entire environment. And access will be added or revoked as needed. This can be executed either directly from the command line on the server to show that it works from a testing perspective, or it could be part of the check-ins that the Puppet agents do. So this is just a simple example, but the books that Don was passing out are the Puppet types and providers handbook. I think it's pretty short, but that's really where things get pretty advanced. If you can think it up with Puppet, you can probably do it if you have the skill to write the code to do it. Types and providers are a way to extend Puppet to do kind of whatever. We've had some work in the last 6 months or so where we extend Puppet to deal with VLAN aggregation, port aggregation, and setting VLANs on force 10 switches. We've done stuff with storage devices. If it has a command line interface, Puppet can probably do it with some work. There's some pretty sophisticated stuff that was added. The feature parser adds the ability to do all sorts of programming like loops and things, but you don't have to. It could be as simple as this. So this is a quick diagram of not necessarily how Puppet works, but sort of the process flow. So the idea with Puppet is infrastructure as code, or software-defined infrastructure, as it says. And what we are, when we do service engagements, what we're really pitching to our customers is that we're going to come out and enable them to drive themselves forward. As a company right now, Puppet Labs is much more focused on building awareness in the ecosystem and getting people knowledgeable about Puppet than we are about selling giant service engagements where customers are reliant upon us to do it. In fact, I've talked directly with customers and said, hey, you could buy more time, but I really am not that interested in selling it to you. I would rather find more customers to help out and get you guys on the road to do it yourselves. So the way Puppet works is you write the code similar to that SSH code before. You can simulate it. So Puppet has what we call no-op mode, or noob. I prefer no-op. Please use no-op. No noob. So you simulate it, in a test environment. You can see, if I ran this, what would it do? Or even, wouldn't recommend it on production, but it's no-op. It won't make any changes, but it will tell you what it would have done. Then once you're confident that it will do what it's going to do, you can enforce that change. You can either do this by applying it to your production environment, or by, if your production environment runs in no-op, we actually have a command called no-op, which will allow you to force it to run. And then once the run has completed, Puppet will send you a report of what happened, what it did, where it failed, if it failed, or what it changed, if it succeeded. This is a diagram of the stages of a Puppet run. So Puppet is a centralized control model, but it's a little bit different in that the node initiates the check-in. So the Puppet master does not control the agents. The agents talk to the Puppet master and get directions on what to do. They do it of their own accord, generally. There are ways to force runs to happen, but by default, the Puppet agent is installed and has a 30-minute run interval. So every 30 minutes, it's going to dial home to the master and say, here is the data about me, the facts. This includes very simple things from their IP address and hosting, up to kind of complex programmatic determinations based on whatever you want to write. You can write custom facts that, for instance, I've been talking with a customer who's trying to do something where they can fail over their virtual environment from one data center to another. And so the big thing that we're working with them on is, if you fail over and you want to point at these different Yum repos and you can't do it by a DNS because that group is not bought in, how do you know where this server is? How can we tell the server where to go? And so we've been working with them on, how can we get hooks into VMware or something that will allow us to know where that goes. That's going to be a custom fact. So the agent sends facts to the master, and the master uses those facts to compile what we call a catalog. And I think an important distinction here is that Puppet is secured by SSL, so all the communication is encrypted. And then on the master side, the master is the only thing that knows about the entire infrastructure. So if a single node is compromised, you don't necessarily lose control of your whole infrastructure, just that node. And if that node requests things from the master, it only gets back what it should based on its facts and on its hosting, or whatever other way it's figuring out what code should go on it. This is important because if you've got 50 different types of servers, you don't want your web servers to know maybe what goes on your database servers. We don't want them to know about if they're on your if they're web-facing stuff. You don't want them to necessarily be able to get at the information that exists on the your internal servers that maybe host your email, that sort of thing. So the catalog is a set of directions based on the facts that the node sends. And the master sends that catalog to the agent. And then the agent takes those directions and runs them and makes the changes or reports the failures or doesn't do anything because everything was already fine. And then it sends a report back to the master saying, here's what happened, here's what I did, here's what failed, here's what didn't fail, here's what changed, here's what didn't change. And then the master from that point sends the report off to a collector of some sort. In PE, this is the Puppet console. In other tools, there are other options. I think there's all manner of report handlers that can go from HTTP to syslogs to, I think there's a Twitter report handler somewhere if you really wanted to do that. I don't think you want to do that though. This is a pretty abstracted diagram of the Puppet architecture. So on the bottom, you'll see the various agents that maybe one is on the cloud, one is actual bare metal, one is a virtual machine. So they check into the Puppet master, which includes various things. It includes reporting. If it's PE, it probably has a GUI and some sort of workflows associated with it. It has content, and by content we mean Puppet modules and potentially data via Hiera. Then it has admin and security in there. And then up at the top there's the forge, which we'll talk about in a bit. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Puppet Enterprise, not too long, but that is where my salary comes from. So Puppet and Puppet Enterprise are the same. Puppet is in Puppet Enterprise, but Puppet Enterprise includes some other stuff that's nice as well. It's a solid platform. We test it extensively. We do roughly a quarterly release right now. And what PE does is it bundles all the stuff, all the different projects that make up the Puppet open source, and makes them install easily. If you're going to stitch it all together yourselves, you've either got to really understand how the pieces work together, or use someone else's custom installation script, which probably works okay. Ours has been tested on every platform we support. It goes through pretty rigorous CI. Not that there aren't still bugs, but it comes with support. It also gets you access to services. So, if you've got a really complex problem you need solved ASAP, and you don't have the expertise to do it, you can call us, and we will get someone out there to help you. So my notes here say, Puppet Enterprise is more than 45 different packages. It's a scripted installation method, which makes it easy to set up. You're up and running in less than an hour. It's all there. It's got a GUI. It's got mCollective integrated. Hiera's there. It comes with a number of features out of the box. We recently added improved agent installers. So rather than in the past where you had to run a script to get the agent to install, now you can just curl it down, and it will install from the Puppet master as a package. Makes it a lot simpler to do that stuff. So it really simplifies things. It has a few nice features, but I think the biggest selling point of PE is both the time to value, in that you just run it, you run the installer and it sets it up and you're good to go, and the support. So support, because PE is based on Puppet, it comes with the same ecosystem that Puppet comes with, as well as our support group, who's I get pulled into the escalations they've got, and those guys are sharp. I have great things to say about our support team. It also gives you, I think the term a lot of the customers I talk to, one throat to choke. If things go bad, you call us and we'll help you. Where with open source, you're really relying on the community, which community is very responsive too. They're good. That said, they do not have an SLA. We're also working on, we have a number of different service partners that we're training. So we're building out a partner program, and yeah. So really, I guess my point is Puppet Enterprise gets you there faster. And I'm going to run through a few of the features that are pretty handy with it. The first that we added, I think 9 months ago or so, was Event Inspector. And so this graphic doesn't work real well. You can find some videos on YouTube that show how it might be useful. Event Inspector allows you to look across your infrastructure and look at failures by classes, by nodes, or by resource types. And so this is useful because if you just changed a package or you just changed a class and you want to see, did my class work? And you go here and you can see, I have I have classes, how many have failures, how many have changes, how many have skips, and how many are in no-op. So if you made a change and suddenly you have some failures, you can dig into this, and it will show you a list of the various failures. We found that this makes it really easy to troubleshoot things, where before you just had a whole series of Puppet logs to dig through to try and figure out the details. This can really pop up like, here are the issues that you've got, and this issue affects this many nodes, and so it makes it a lot easier to troubleshoot things. Puppet Enterprise also includes live management, which is a web GUI for mCollective, which is our orchestration. What we call the orchestration engine in PE is driven by mCollective. You might, if you're curious, look up some videos on mCollective. I think when I started at Puppet, I looked it up, and it's pretty sweet. It's this idea of the network is truth. So it sends queries out to all your servers or the select servers that you've filtered against, and it tells you things about them or allows you to do things against them. So in this case, you can do remote control of the Puppet agents. You can force a Puppet run. When you've got that change that you've otherwise been running in no-op and you want to run in no-op, this will allow you to do that. I would caution you, do not run all your servers. Do not Puppet run all your servers at once. We had one customer who actually while our PS guys were out there, I think we had 1,200 or 1,500 servers checking into a split out master all at once. We call it the thundering herd. Over time, the agents will actually, they have a splay to randomize the intervals between the check-ins to try and distribute that 30-minute check-in equally over time. I will say I think it took 2 or 3 days for the splay to finally catch up and get things back to random after we run them all at once, so word of warning there. Live management also allows you to do inventory. So this both looks at PuppetDB, which we'll talk about in a bit, and I think uses mCollective to look across your groups and tell you, do I have, in this case, we see some groups here that have nodes, and if you had 2 nodes and 2 variants, you would know that those 2 nodes are both different, which might be a concern depending on how you've got your infrastructure set up. So this is very useful for seeing how consistent are my servers, or how consistent are my groupings from the console. PE also includes the cloud provisioner and VMware support. So from the Puppet Enterprise command line, you can spin up VMware nodes. You can also spin up AWS nodes. We recently added support for non-root Puppet agents. This was a big ask from a lot of our customers, where either the department that brought us in is unable to get root on the box, or or maybe they've got a service provider who will not give them root. I've been in a number of situations where a customer has outsourced their IT and to a managed service provider, and they're now trying to kind of bring it back in-house sort of by using Puppet to do so. But this is the way you can do it without having root. There are a few limitations, but in general, this is which if you need to do this, we could talk you through. But it allows you to get, if you're a development group and you can't get root on the box because ops won't give it to you, you can still run Puppet. Another recent addition, supported modules. I think we're up to 12 or 15 of these right now. So when you look on the Puppet Forge, you'll now see these sort of tagged with that down there. Tagged and supported and usable and tested with Puppet 3.2 or higher. As we go forward, we'll continue testing them. So you can call us with questions about them if they have issues, and we will fix them. And they'll continue to be patched for security fixes and other bugs as time goes on. What this means is that there are now CI testing fees against each version of Puppet Enterprise as it ships, and we expect to be pretty responsive to any bugs you do find. Right now, this is a pretty short list, and a lot of them are kind of lower level stuff. Apt, concat, firewall, reboot for Windows. But this list will continue to grow. What we're trying to do is build a good base set of supported modules that make it so that as people use PE, they don't have to continue they don't have to build all their own stuff from scratch, so that you can pull 80% of what you need from the Forge and you only have to build the other 20%. There's a lot of green on here. I mean, what we're trying to do is make sure it's supported on as many of our supported platforms as possible, but obviously some of this stuff is not applicable, like the registry is only a Windows thing. And similarly, reboots are handled on Linux, no problem, but I think on Windows, we actually have a module to do reboots. So check out supported modules. It's a great addition, and we'll continue adding to them. So supported modules are on the Puppet Forge, which I hope many of you have checked out the Forge. How about a show of hands for how many have looked through the Forge? Good. Just as many or more than have used Puppet. So I think there's about 2,000 or 2,200 modules on the Forge right now. And in many cases, multiple modules for the same thing. So that's one thing we're working on is how can we make the information on the Forge better and more useful to you? Sort of what's relevant, what's not, what's good, what's not, what does certain things and what doesn't. This is a picture of this Forge with the new support module badging. It will tell you, what version of PE it's been supported on, and then it's Puppet supported. Sounds like people know the Forge pretty well. All right, so I'm done with the PE part. So let's talk about open source. And how many here are using open source? Thank you. Great. So open source is a way for us to have a technical proving ground. It's a place for us to make fast changes and not have to promise 2 years of support. To put it in perspective, we're still releasing patches for PE 2.7, 2.8, and that's a high burden for us to support 2.8, but it's what we do because that's what PE is. On the open source side, though, we're trying to have a space where we can move quickly and make changes and test them, and if they don't work out, roll them back. And if they do work out, eventually roll them into Puppet Enterprise. I think I sort of, open source is to us what Fedora is to Red Hat. So Puppet is a set of highly flexible core components. You've got, which I'll just run through now. The first one is Puppet, right? Puppet is the core of Puppet, right? It's the core language that I showed you earlier for SSH. It's the system for enforcing it. It's the RAL, the resource abstraction layer, which is how you get to this place of defining end state rather than steps to get to the end state. And it's reusable modules via the Forge. Oh wow, there's a lot of notes on this one. So Puppet has its own domain-specific language, which is what I showed you. The idea is that this will be easy to consume. There are other tools out there that use other languages, but what we found is that the Puppet language is pretty easy for even a newcomer to understand. Like, oh, that's a file, and it's coming from here, and it's this file. Puppet is very built around the idea of idempotence. So this idea that if you run Puppet 4 times in a row, in general, you'll have the same outcome each time, that it won't break itself after multiple runs. Where with just some scripts, if you run the same thing twice, you might break something. As I said, it's model-based, so you define the end state that you want, and Puppet figures out how to get there. There are some things that won't work for, but the vast majority of things it will work for. And it's a lot easier to just say, here's what the server is or should be, not here's all the steps to get to that. So the idea is that with Puppet you can take modules from the Forge and quickly start managing things and just get going and provide something that is both auditable and repeatable and will handle, at the very least, your low-level blocks early before you can expand into other areas. Another part of the open source tools is mcollective, or MCO as we call it. So as you can see here, it's like I described, the network has truth. There is no central point of authority in MCO. I think we've got some plugins now that can take a look at PuppetDB to say, query PuppetDB to figure out the facts, the servers that would have these facts, and then send out a command. MCO is a bit of a tough tool to wrap your head around at first. I know our PSEs even are less advanced with it than they are with Puppet. but it's incredibly powerful. Although once you've got the keys to it, you've kind of got the keys to everything. You can really use it to do discovery. So show me all the nodes that have this package installed, all the way to run Puppet on every node all at once and bring my Puppet master into a smoking crater. PuppetDB is another thing. This is, I think, 2 or 3 years old now. And before PuppetDB, we had this thing called store configs, which was really slow. And now with PuppetDB, I think we did some scale testing recently, where we spun up 3 Puppet masters and we simulated the load of 10,000 nodes checking in. 10,000 nodes, I guess, I would say 10,000 splayed out across the 30-minute intervals, so whatever that load would be. And what we found is that a single server PuppetDB instance stood up. It was never a bottleneck. Well, the 3 masters started to get iffy around 15,000 nodes reporting in. The PuppetDB server never had an issue. So PuppetDB's also got some really strong, well-versioned APIs. And we're, on the Puppet Enterprise side, we're slowly moving all of our reporting data. Much of it already exists in PuppetDB, but the rest of it will be in the near future. So PuppetDB stores all the configuration information. When the node checks into the Puppet master, that data is also sent to PuppetDB, where it's stored so that the master can reference it later as well. The idea is that it knows all the facts, it knows all the last report states, has all the last catalogs. It's really the place that if you're going to report out of Puppet, it's the first place to stop. It also allows what we call exported resources, which is a way to coordinate efforts between nodes. So the common example is you've got a cluster of nodes, and the first node in the cluster spins up, and it exports a resource to PuppetDB. Then the later cluster nodes export, or they both export their own information to to PuppetDB and collect the existing clusters. And they converge and know about each other because of that. It allows cross-node coordination, which is otherwise difficult. Factor, the verb to fact. So facts are bits of data about your nodes that you care about. Factor is key in Puppet. I don't know that you can, I don't see how you run trouble without it. Yeah, so factor is all about the data that your node has and sending it to the master. Hiera is a hierarchical way of splitting your data out from your modules. And this is one of the best practices we recommend, that your modules become as reusable as possible and have as little embedded data as possible. And instead that data comes from Hiera. Hiera, by default runs from a YAML file or YAML files on your server, and those files allow you to just data separation is key here. There's also a way that you can build additional Hiera backends to pull from other data sources. I see customers do it with MongoDB, CouchDB, MySQL. I think we had one customer ask about MS SQL, which I did not find, but I'm sure it could be written. Razor is another open source project, and right now it's been rewritten in the last 3 months, 6 months, something like that. So right now it's in tech preview, which means we sort of support it. If you call, we will give you our best effort. With that said, it's still undergoing some finishing touches. Razor's pretty slick. It's a rule-based provisioning system for bare metal servers. So it's a bare metal server checks in to Razor and is pixie booted with a microkernel that then applies the actual OS that you want, sets up Puppet, and then runs Puppet on it. The idea is that this will make physical machines as easy to provision as VMs. And we're also investigating kind of what the use case is here for using this for VM provisioning, whether it can call out to some other hypervisor and get things started or not. So some pictures of our office space right there. I've been at Puppet Labs for a year, and people here are really passionate about helping you guys, helping the whole community to do better with Puppet, to understand how things are working, to inform people. It's really great. just how engaged everyone is. We keep adding more employees. Like I said, we've doubled in the last year. I'm not sure we'll double again this year, at least not in employees. But we're growing like crazy, and we're growing like getting tons of customers too. So here's our obligatory slide. This is only a few. In our office, we have a wall of plaques of various customer logos, and they keep having to add more shelves for them. I think we had to take a few off this because we got some takedown notices, but still some good ones up there. So we're hiring. If you like what you hear, if you want to work in professional services, which means traveling, consulting, please talk to me. I would love to talk to you. I have to find a bunch more PSEs this year. And it's a fun job going out and see a new customer every week, potentially. Help people with problems, help people get started, see them learn. We also have tons of engineering positions. I think right now we're 40 or more than 40% engineering across the entire company. So everything, we're hiring tons of QA people, module engineers, Forge developers, Windows, platform, you name it, there's probably a job out there. You can check it out there on puppetlabs.com/careers. Solution engineering, Dave Roberts will be up here talking later, demoing PE. He's one of our technical solutions engineers. As well as support. We've got tons of admin stuff as well. So what's next for the people in this room? Well, I hope you'll join the community. Even if you don't use PE, if you get involved in the community and if Puppet makes your life better, that would make all of us very happy. So here's some places that you can look. Talk to people in this room, attend some meetups, come to more Puppet camps. You can check out ask.puppetlabs.com. We have I think the Lee Lauder here on the profile there. Spends a ton of time on Ask, answering questions. He's actually one of our support engineers. Last year at PuppetConf, he did a presentation on how to get started in the community. I think you can find the video, maybe not the video online, but at least the slides. We have mailing lists, PE or Puppet users, Puppet Dev. If you're a PE user, you'll get invited to the PE users list. We have IRC. The IRC channel is Pound Puppet on Freenode. There's a lot of people in there all the time, so feel free to drop in and say hey. You can help us with bug triage. We had a triage-a-thon just last week, where we had people in the office and people were remote just looking for the outstanding bugs with Puppet, with any of the open source projects, and taking a stab and saying, hey, where are these at? Do they still exist? Are they still an issue? You can contribute code. If you want to get involved in core Puppet development, do it. That'd be awesome. You can contribute modules on the Forge, or even make pull requests against other people's modules that are on the Forge. I know a number of my PSEs they make funny comments to me like, now that everyone's using this module, I have to actually respond to their pull requests and make stuff better. You can take in-person training and get certified. Here's our current track. So I think our training is going to change a little bit. Some of the names are changing. Advanced Puppet will be broken into 2 different components in the near future. But for now, this is what we've got. I highly recommend Puppet Fundamentals for anyone getting started. It's a pretty intense 3-day course, about half lecture, half lab. And having gone through it in my first few weeks of Puppet, it was pretty in-depth. Get certified. The marketplace is really rewarding people that know Puppet these days. I know we're having a hard time finding people that know Puppet, so I'm sure the certification has value. There's also Extending Puppet, which is actually, I think, going away. We'll be moving that to a more web-based course in the future. We do trainings worldwide. We have partners across the world. I guess in all of these red countries. I think we do them in other places too. So check out our trainings. These are real quotes from real people. We have online trainings. If you go to the Puppet Labs workshop on our website, they're pretty short videos, and then some of them spin up an Amazon micro instance for you to do some exercises around what you just saw in the video. For people that are going to take our trainings, or that are going to do services work with us, we highly recommend that they go through at least a few of these. And in the near future, we'll have kind of some suggestions on the path to take as you work through these trainings, as you learn Puppet. So check them out. You can influence our products. I saw somebody here with the Test Pilots t-shirt. You too could have a sweet Test Pilots t-shirt. So Puppet Test Pilots is run by our user experience group, and they do, I think, weekly they try and do at least a handful of interviews. They both get a t-shirt and get some sort of gift card usually. And we're just trying to see, how do people, if we show them a prototype, how do they use it? Are we building the right stuff for our customers? Or are our assumptions wrong? They're very scientific about it. They've got a hypothesis about what users want, and they change that as things go on. Go to PuppetConf in September. Put your name in the bowl that was up front, or your business card in the bowl that was up front. We'll draw it at the end, as Owen said. It's going to be big this year. Last year we were a little over 1,000 people and it was cramped, and this year we're going for even more than that. There will also be training ahead of PuppetConf. The Saturday, Sunday, Monday before it, we'll offer fundamentals and advanced courses, or I guess we'll have a practitioner. Any questions?
Surely somebody has a question.
So,
We'll just stare awkwardly.
I've got 13 minutes left, so this is your chance. Over there.
So what games are on the Neo Geo box?
The question is, what games are on the Neo Geo box? Some sort of fighter game, Bubble Bobble, a soccer game of some sort. I should remember the names of them. They're a lot of fun. We actually have one of our sport guys, Ken Johnson, restores old cabinets like that. And so he wheels in something new every month or two, it seems like. Or he'll be in there after work, tinkering on it, soldering something. It's a fun addition to the office for sure. Yeah, all these pictures, various things around our office. I don't remember when we had the kids in doing crafts or whatever, but it's a fun space, except for moving in November. Any other questions? Right there in the middle. Sure. There's a guy over here, Jay Fischel, who can totally help you with enterprise pricing.
Up here.
Right up there. He'll come down from his perch up there, though.
Can you share the slides?
I don't have them on this deck. All right. No other questions? All right. Well, thanks everyone. Check out these websites to learn more, and hit me up after I get off the stage if you have any more questions. Thanks.